Welcome as we start our first video of our Burma history series. Today we share with you the story of one of the greatest kings in Burmese history, King Alaungpaya of the Konbaung Dynasty. He who united a falling nation, revitalized its prestige, conquered new lands, and defeated not one but two colonial powers. Sit back and let's learn together with our Tiger Bite-sized history team. By the start of the 18th century, the former glorious Burmese kingdom of the great King Bayinnaung was disintegrated, lost all of its former glory. Over 1.5 centuries had passed since the reign of Bayinnaung the Great. The royal line ended, and it passed on only through the female line within a few generations. Subsequently, after Bayinnaung, only a few competent kings held this Toungoo kingdom together with dignity, and the territorial extent achieved by the great king would be no more. By the start of the 1700s, Burma was facing extreme hardships and humiliation. The warlike kings and generals of Bayinnaung's era in the 16th century passed on to an era of poetic and literary kings and courtiers in the 18th century. Just like the old Song dynasty in 12th century China, where its soldier-poet-dominated court failed to meet the military threat from the nomadic Khitans and Jurchens sniping throughout their land. Burma began to lose its territorial integrity, facing crises from within and from without. From 1729 to 1740, Burma faced raids from the Manipuris in the northwest, Shan incursions from the northeast, and rebellious provinces in the south, inside Lower Burma and Lan Na. In 1740s, it was here in Lower Burma that the back of Bayinnaung's heirs reigning in Ava was finally broken. A series of rebellions erupted, first from a Burmese governor, then the major cities erupted in the south, and finally, a full-fledged unrest from the populace overtook Lower Burma. In its infancy, this rebellion took the form of a united front, one made up of the overtaxed and mistreated people of Lower Burma. The rebels consisted of ethnic Burmese, Gwe Shans, or Shans relocated into Burma proper from the Shan Mountain during Bayinnaung's time, and the Mon, which they all sought to overthrow the oppression and corruption of the distant Toungoo Court in Ava. Meanwhile, over in India, the European powers observed the unrest explode. They looked for their chance to strike. Ever since 1729, the French had shown interest in Burma, thirsty for the country's abundant natural resources like tea and crude oil. They watched and ruled from their colonial and trade conclaves surrounding Burma. Finally, they launched their schemes into Burma once the people of Lower Burma made a Shan Burmese monk their new king. This monk was an overtly religious and ineffectual ruler, who would be called the Lord Striped Buddha. The rebels would proclaim the restoration of the Hantawadi Empire of old, which was a direct challenge to the Toungoo Court in Ava. Now, the European strike eventually came in the form of the French, where they targeted the ethnic Mons to build common cause and wrest away Lower Burma into their sphere of influence. The French colony in India used their connections with the local Christian priests to nurture friendly relations with the Mon. With the urging of the French, the Mons turned on their foe ethnic Burmese and deposed the rebel-appointed Lord Striped Buddha, who was a Shan Burmese. In 1746, they replaced the king with a Mon freedom fighter turned prime minister from Chiang Mai, called Binya Dala. He then appointed a fellow Mon as commander-in-chief, whose name was Dalaban. This renewed Hantawadi kingdom went after the Burmese within their land, putting restrictions on them, and Binyadala would also form an alliance with the Gwaishans aimed at going after Burmese Toungoo. Hantawadi then expanded their probes into the borders of the Toungoo kingdom, testing its defenses. Next, by 1751, the French sent in their wiliest officer, Sieur de Bruno, who inked a treaty with the new Mon Hantawadi kingdom, rendering military aid from France. With French backing and prodding from Bruno, Hantawadi, with European mercenaries and guns, moved against the Burmese Toungoo kingdom. First, Hantawadi probed the southern territories of the Toungoo, striking at Prom, Paye, and Toungoo, and moving up against Ava itself. By the end of 1751, Binyadala launched a full-scale invasion of Upper Burma, with his younger brother, the Uparaja, and the Mon commander-in-chief Dalaban, leading two massive armies totaling 60,000 men up the Irrawaddy River. In March 1752, Ava was sacked and the Toungoo Burmese king was captured, ending the 200-year-old Burmese Toungoo Dynasty. Hantawadi, with their quick successes in capturing Ava, had overlooked the vigor of the Burmese. The Uparaja turned back down to Lower Burma with 2/3 of the Mon army. Dalaban remained behind, sending out messengers to initiate water oaths of allegiance from the rest of Upper Burma. However, the flame of Burmese resistance had not died out. The Mon mistook the lack of resistance put up by the Toungoo kingdom as Burmese subservience. In reality, the Toungoo king simply lacked weight to rally and corral his people to defend his kingdom. There was no love lost for the Toungoo king, for he and his court commanded neither respect nor affection. The Burmese people were desperate for leadership in the face of raids from the Manipuris and Gwaishans. For the past decade and a half, the Toungoo king had failed to provide it, being fat in Ava with his playwrights and poets. For the Burmese, leadership would come from a Chine, or village chief, from the village of Moksobo in the Mu River Valley. This chief that would rally the Burmese was Konbaung Dynasty. He was a man whose reputation was well known in Upper Burma, as he was not only a village chief but served as deputy of the Mu Valley district to his uncle, the Lord Sitta. He was responsible for tax collection and preservation of the peace in the district, giving him government experience and insight to what was wrong with the corrupt Toungoo kingdom. Over a decade prior to the fall of Ava, he was called before the Toungoo king's court on charges of treasonable activity. However, he defeated the charges, returning to a quiet life as a 38-year-old successful village chief and district deputy. An English captain named Baker, upon recollection from seeing Aung Zaye, depicted him as, quote, a handsome man of imposing appearance, 5 feet 10 inches tall, with an air of authority. Meanwhile, once news arrived that Ava had fallen, Aung Zaye acted and fortified Moksobo and prepared his village. In the surrounding area, news of Aung Zaye's efforts spread, and here, famously, he won the support of 46 villages who moved their inhabitants into Moksobo, transforming the village into an armed stockade. Under Aung Zaye's guidance, the Burmese engineered the surrounding 10-mile area of Moksobo into a wasteland, where, to not allow any supplies or reprieve for any invading army, Aung Zaye filled the wells and streams, burned the vegetation, and removed trees to fortify Moksobo. Aung Zaye and the Burmese knew they were up against the odds and were priming for a showdown with the Hantawadi, and they expected no help from any other quarter of Upper Burma, as it was being taken over by raiders, deserters, and invading Shans. To allay the mass confusion of people squeezing together at Moksobo, Aung Zaea created an advisory council made up of headmen from the 46 villages along with men of merit and national spirit. When Dalaban's messengers arrived to demand oaths of allegiance, news of a large Hantawadi force gave the Burmese pause. Divided in their response, some of the advisory council suggested aligning with a newly declared pretender king that led a roving Guishan army, while others proposed swearing oaths of loyalty to the Mons now and rebelling later when they were stronger. Aung Zaea, however, disagreed, and he swayed the wavering council with his word, famously recorded by Burmese historian Myainnaung, where he resolutely uttered the following: "Once an oath of allegiance has been taken, it must never be broken. If we break our oath after we have taken it, history will forever judge us as oath breakers. Shame on the pages." End quote. Inspired by his conviction, the Burmese at Moksobo chose to fight under his leadership. When the Hantawadi forces arrived, the Burmese ambushed and repelled them. A larger Hantawadi detachment soon followed, only to suffer a similar fate, defeated in the jungle before even reaching a 10-mile artificial wasteland. These surprise decisive engagements would become hallmark of Aung Zaea's later campaigns across Southeast Asia. Finally, Dalaban sent a whole regiment of Mon soldiers, and it too was defeated by Aung Zaea and the Burmese. The reputation of the stout defense by Aung Zaea began luring Burmese compatriots from all over Upper Burma. People from all walks of life came, ranging from farmers, merchants, artisans, scholars, soldiers, and former government officials. They all streamed in to serve under the banner of Burma's new defender. Aung Zaea, now bolstered by the people's trust, faith in his leadership, would declare himself a king. He took measures with guidance from learned scholars now in his retinue to demonstrate the ascension of a proper monarch. Moksobo was renamed Shwebo, or, quote, the Palace of the Golden Commander. He proclaimed rulership as king of all Burma, not just old lands of the previous Toungoo king. He was now enthroned with the title of Alaungpaya, or translated to as the Great Lord, who shall be a Buddha one day. His new court would declare him as successor to the kings of Tagong, Pagan, Ava, and Pegu. His new Konbaung Dynasty would now enter the history book. Unlike the pretender kings propping up all over Burma, like daisies at the time, Alaungpaya differentiated himself by aspiring to create a new age of Burmese greatness, placing his capital not at the old capitals of Pagan, Ava, or Pegu, but at Shwebo. News of his proclamation brought on more Burmese to Shwebo. Along with the benefit of additional arms, people from as far as Minden arrived, where a leader brought a regiment of fully equipped soldiers ready to serve the new Konbaung Dynasty. The people were enthusiastic and quietly confident. However, thoughts of the Hantawadi force still nestled at their old capital provided sobering refocus. In Ava, Dalaban called up reinforcements from Pegu, and their full Mon army went on the attack. The Hantawadi forces marched up the Mu River. The fighting at Shwebo lasted for 5 days. The Mons charged and suffered heavy casualties through the 10-mile desert and surrounding moat. After waves of men were thrown at Shwebo, a dejected Dalaban sounded the retreat. As the Mon forces were withdrawing, Alaungpaya made his trademark move. storming out from Shuebo, surprising and devastating the Mon army. The Burmese chased the Mon all the way back towards Ava. Shuebo could now rest, safely with assurances that another Mon attack would be highly unlikely. With the defeated Mon holed up at Ava, Alaungpaya went after the Guishan pretender king and his other dissident forces. By the end of 1752, the whole of Upper Burma, along with the Shan states as far as Monmeng, was under the rule of the new Konbaung Dynasty. All that was remaining under the control of Hantawadi was Ava and its surrounding area. As the Burmese were at the threshold of a complete downfall, Alaungpaya miraculously and courageously flipped the script for his people and nation. Now, Alaungpaya would not be considered one of the greatest Burmese kings if all his accomplishments were purely military success. But Alaungpaya was an able administrator and reformer too. The British author G.E. Harvey would write that he inspired his people to do greater things. It was said that for the men to be named as one of Alaungpaya's investitures was the ambition of men's lives. Now, after a whole year of endless fighting, fleeing, and devastation being brought upon the land by constant warfare, Alaungpaya knew his people needed to rest. The fields needed to be sowed, and governing policy needed to be implemented. To build a stable government and offices of state, Alaungpaya expanded Shuebo with new brick walls, moats, temples, and palaces. He settled the religious turmoil haunting the previous dynasty by appointing a new primate to guide ecclesiastical policy. He gathered the scholars and ex-government officials and started the process of creating a rudimentary codified law book, which would be known as the Manuki or Manuki Law Book. Once this law book was finished later in 1755, it became extremely popular as it created a foundation of basic universal law written in simple Burmese while only using a little bit of the Pali ancient language that was dominant among the elite society in Burma, giving greater access to all in understanding laws and customs in Burma. To govern the people, scholarship was encouraged with awards and titles to scholars and poets. Now, Alaungpaya was someone who appreciated history, always a plus for us here at Tiger Bite-Sized History. And in remembering the history of a prior Burmese king who was cut short due to the vice of alcoholism, he banned alcohol. And to limit the excesses and bad practices at that time, he banned animal sacrifice connected with spirit worship, where in some instances, an entire elephant or teams of horses would be sacrificed at a funeral for a dead chief. Also, in caring for his people and reinforcing Buddhist morality, which was decaying under the corrupt Toungoo, elders above the age of 60 were freed from corvée service, and their food, clothing, and travel was paid for by the king's treasury. To revitalize the economy, Alaungpaya employed merchants, blacksmiths, and craftsmen that flocked to Shuebo in damming up the Mu River to create canals and expand agricultural land, dividing both abandoned and new farmland for the new refugees and residents in his land. Further, there was a prohibition on the killing of cattle for any reason, for this plow animal was desperately needed in the rice field, which were now being cultivated again after the many years of turmoil and warfare under the Toungoo and Hantawadi. After a whole year of resting his nation and implementing these sweeping policies and reforms, Alaungpaya led his Konbaung army and laid siege to Ava in 1754. The Hantawadi swiftly fled at night from Ava without much resistance. Alaungpaya entered Ava in triumph with a reinvigorated nation. And with that, we leave part 1 of our Burma history series and the amazing story of King Alaungpaya, a man who halted the fall of an entire people and laid the foundations to the creation of an empire. He truly deserves the epithet as one of the 3 great kings of Burmese history. A definite champion of this tighter bite-sized history channel. We thank you. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Join us next time, and a reminder to all our viewers that time marches on. Thank you.